Hi, welcome. I'm glad you could join me. I'd like to start this presentation by asking you a question. I'd like to ask you how you feel when you wake up in the morning. How do you feel? Do you wake up full of energy and enthusiasm, ready to face the challenges of the day? Or like most people, do you feel like you should really just hide under the duvet and wait for the world just to give you some peace and quiet so that you can just regain a little bit more energy, a little bit more enthusiasm? The reason I ask this is because one of the major problems that's affecting people today is stress. That's right. We live in a world that is just phenomenally stressful. And today is a very special day because today marks the time when you are going to be able to set yourself free from stress. Now, the tragedy is that there are literally hundreds of millions of people around the world today who are totally dependent on prescription medication for being able to sleep, for getting some sense of calm into their system. And if you start to think about the side effects of all of those millions and millions of prescriptions, we have to ask ourselves a question. Surely there must be a better alternative. I'm not suggesting that we should just abandon prescriptions, but surely it must be a good moment for us to ask if there's a better way for us to just get rid of all of the crazy stress and tension. It's just time to put down the baseball bat, take a deep breath, and step away from all those sharp objects. Yeah, we know how stress affects people. And I'd like to ask you another question. Just imagine for a moment how you'd feel if you were more in control of your life. Have you thought about that recently? I mean, do you ever wake up feeling that your life could really be so much better than it is right now? Now, it's an important question because if we are learning to live with stress as if it's just a completely normal aspect of our lives, we're probably ignoring the enormous amount of damage that's being done to our health, to our well-being, to our creativity, to our relationships, because stress is damaging our lives at every possible level. And the answer to this is not necessarily to increase the medication, but it's really to learn how to master your stress. I mean, the fact is, if we're really being honest about it, stress is perfectly described as the silent killer in the room. Have you heard that expression? It's really one of the biggest causes of disease as well as unhappiness in the world today. In fact, this plague within our society, this plague of excessive stress and tension, is referred to by medical professionals as toxic stress because it has such a damaging effect on our health. And that's in terms of physical, mental, and emotional health. Now, let's just stop for a moment and begin to consider how we are paying the price for all of this stress. I mean, the list is pretty unpleasant, but let's go through it anyway. We know that it contributes to heart disease. It increases the chances of picking up cancer. It contributes to diabetes, to poor digestion. Oh yeah, high blood pressure. You probably knew that already. We know that it affects sleep. So many people are suffering from poor sleep today. But it also leads to depression, one of the most widespread illnesses in the Western world today. But we meet so many people who are suffering from physical and mental exhaustion, people who are suffering from burnout because the stress is just too much. One of my colleagues described it as the silent vampire. I know, it sounds dramatic, but in a way it's kind of true because all that stress just drains your creativity. And you know, when you think about it, it just empties the joy from your life. So what we're suggesting is that today, right now, is the perfect time for you to learn how to take better control of your life. And really, that means learning how to master your stress response. We know, according to evolutionary biologists, that the stress response developed when we were running around the plains of Africa as a way to increase our chances of survival. You've probably heard about that. And if you think about the way that your stress response kicks in, you know that it's going to give you tunnel vision, Well, that kind of makes sense because you want to be able to focus on the problem or the threat or whatever's trying to turn you into lunch at that particular moment. It's going to give you an adrenaline rush to increase your strength, your ability to run away or to fight off the predator. And that means you're going to have an increased heart rate. The blood's going to leave the digestive system and it's going to rush to your extremities because obviously your body wants to protect you in case you're hurt or injured or wounded. But really we should consider a deeper aspect of this stress response. It really encourages the more primitive part of your brain to take over. And that's something we're going to come back to because it's a very important consideration for us to think about. However, let me give you a spoiler alert. Are you ready for this? Despite the fact that pretty much everybody we know is suffering from excessive levels of stress and tension, the stress response, are you ready for this? The stress response was only intended to last for about 2 or 3 minutes. Are you surprised? I mean, that's really just about enough time for you to go into hyper mode and either run away or fight off the predator, that big saber-toothed cat that's trying to turn you into lunch. And here's the most interesting part of this little presentation. As soon as the danger was past, and assuming we'd survived, guess what happened? We just switched off the stress response. We switched it off. It wasn't supposed to last for more than 2 and 3 minutes. So the same mechanisms that gave us the stress response also gave us the natural mechanisms for switching it off to allow us to get on with our lives. Now, if you're scratching your head and thinking, well, I understand how we are constantly stressed, but are you saying that we also have a natural mechanism for switching it off? Well, you better be prepared to share that. And guess what? That's exactly what I want to do. Because if we think about the way the body has developed, the way our responses have developed, nature did not endow us with a very expensive set of survival responses without giving us a mechanism for switching it off when we didn't need it. So, the great news is that your body is perfectly equipped to turn down the stress response. That's right. The reality is that as a species, we would never have survived in the face of danger and predators and all sorts of problems if we'd been stressed all the time. Remember that problem you have when you're stressed and you get tunnel vision? Well, that's not the best way for you to engage your creativity. Tunnel vision out there in the plains of Africa would have meant we probably would have missed important signs for food or water or shelter or even spotting a sneaky predator that was creeping up on us. In other words, humans, and I hope I can include you in that description, humans are hardwired as a species to be calm, alert, and aware. That's right. And that's how we exercise optimum efficiency. Well, take a look around you. Clearly, somewhere along the line, something's gone terribly wrong. Everywhere you look, you just see signs of people being massively stressed. And as I said right at the start, there are literally hundreds of millions of people today who are totally dependent on their prescription medication to be able to relax, to sleep, to try and calm down. And here's a tough question. Are you one of them? The fact is that we live in a highly stressed world. In fact, when you look around you, everybody you see is probably suffering from stress. Let's take a little fact break here. There is surprising evidence that around about 95% of people today in the Western world are suffering from adrenal stress. That means their adrenaline levels are elevated. And the problem is, as we've, I think, clearly identified, there is so much stress, there is so much tension, and it's affecting us all the time. And that's a very sobering thought because it's affecting us in every possible way. And so I'd like to suggest that this is the moment, this is the time for us to learn how to tame those crazy stress levels. This is a moment for you to get your life back on track. So, if you feel that you're ready for a happier, stronger, and a more fulfilling life, then you have certainly come to the right place. My name is Greg Parry, and I'd like to offer you a very warm personal welcome to the Wellness Foundation. This is your personal resource for mastering your stress levels and for taking control of your life. Now, let me just state right from the start, we know a lot about stress. And we've been there, we've done it, and we've got the t-shirts to prove it. We have a kind of a standard joke within the foundation, and we define stress very simply. We say, if you really want to learn about the true meaning of stress, all you have to do is get a job, get married, get a mortgage, bring up some kids, and if you really want the full set, then start your own business, because I swear you'll have every possible ingredient in that little equation to teach you the real meaning of stress. But it doesn't mean that those things have to be stressful. Quite the opposite. Well, we've defined stress, we've identified where it comes from, and we know that pretty much everybody that we know, including ourselves, are most likely suffering from way too much stress. So here's the great question. I mean, you're probably wondering exactly how we can help you. And that's a really good question. How can we help you to develop a really powerful resistance, a really strong immunity to life's daily pressures? That's a good question. Well, before we start looking at the techniques, let me give you a zombie alert, because I've often heard, that's right, a zombie alert. I've often heard it discussed that there's only one alternative to stress, and that's to become almost comatose, as if we have to go from one extreme to another. But the reality is that we are able to reduce the stress. You don't have to take it all the way to zero, so that you're barely registering anything on the heart meter. We're talking about taking your stress levels down to where you're able to function much more successfully without your body, your health, your happiness, your relationships paying this exorbitant price for the levels of anxiety that you're currently entertaining. So you're not going to become a zombie. At least I don't think so. We're going to see if we can master your stress, help you to take away the habit of stress and pressure, and leave you feeling bright, alert, energized, capable and creative, so that you can deal with life's challenges so much more effectively. In other words, feeling so much more alive, because it's really hard to appreciate the gift of this life when you're living inside the cage of constant stress and anxiety. And the secret to this brilliant process is simply to use our natural stress release triggers, the ones that evolved naturally within the human condition, the stress release triggers that we seem to have just forgotten about in our rush to become super stressed, super anxious, super fearful people. But this is the simplest and the most direct way for you to turn down the volume on your personal tension meter. So I'm going to share some of these secrets with you right now, and I want you to be able to put these principles right into practice so you can begin to feel the difference right away. And that's an important point, because the moment you initiate these simple, powerful triggers, your body will respond. It responds immediately, as long as you're human. And the first thing we need to consider is that it's all in the shoulders. It's all in the shoulders. From our earliest development, we know that whenever there was any kind of a threat, we would hunch our shoulders. And it makes perfect sense. It's an instinctive reaction to cover up our heart. Now, we don't have any protective armor, we don't have feathers or scales or thick skin, so we would crowd in our shoulders to protect ourselves. And the problem is that, well, whether the problem is real or whether, which is more likely, it's purely imaginary, your body reacts in the same way. Your body reacts in exactly the same way. And if you take a look around you, you'll notice that pretty much everybody is going through life with their shoulders hunched and bunched forwards. And I know that it doesn't help when you're perched in front of a hot computer for hours on end with tons of pressure and stress in your shoulders and all the weight of the world bearing down on those trapezius muscles. But this is a huge clue for us, because the moment that you are able to unlock and very gently release your shoulders, well, that's when you initiate some amazing changes. So let me just walk you through this one, because it's something I want you to be able to practice every hour. It just takes a few seconds. The first thing is, I want you to just be aware of the position of your shoulders. And I want you to be able to move your shoulders back, but I'm talking about a tiny distance, just a few millimeters, nothing exaggerated. And on top of this, I want your chest, your upper body, to remain exactly where it is. So if you start throwing your shoulders back and pushing your chest forwards, this is not good. It's missing the point. It is much more subtle. The moment you open your shoulders and then you just gently let them go, release them, this simple two-step gesture signals to your body that there's no danger. It's as simple and powerful as that. Now, I know you're busy and that you have a million things to think about. That's just the way life is. So the only way this is going to work is for you to make an appointment, maybe at the top of every hour, where you can ask yourself, where are my shoulders? And you probably see, oh, they've moved back forwards again. Naughty shoulders. But gently, carefully, we'll just open up the shoulders and then just release them. And you start to put your whole system back into a calmer, stronger, more centered and balanced way of being. This is powerful. It's not what you're thinking. It's not what you're feeling. You're communicating directly with your stress centers. Unlock and gently relax those shoulders, and you will have an extraordinary result. Remember, it really is incredibly subtle. So please don't exaggerate the movement. Do it gently, and your body will send you thank you notes. Now we're going to move on to the second secret. And in many ways, this is so extraordinarily obvious that I'm always amazed that people seem to miss it. Because when I'm working with groups, it's very rare for me to see people breathing. It's as if they've gone to some special ninja school where they've learned how to do invisible breathing. But breathing is just one of the most powerful things that you just don't do. We don't want to do anything particularly complicated. In fact, we're just going to make a very gentle, slight modification to the way you're breathing. It might not become your new way of breathing, but like the shoulder release, it's such a great thing to practice, maybe once an hour. And it's a very powerful mechanism for helping to calm you down, switch off the stress response, and get your higher brain function to start exercising control over your life. The way you do it is really simple. We follow those ancient yoga methods where we breathe in very gently through the nose. And I want you to feel that you're just gently opening up your rib cage, just gently breathing in. It's a slightly deeper breath than the one that you usually take. It's probably visible. And here's a really good way for you to know when you've taken in too much breath. You know, you can overbreathe. You can overinflate the lungs. I don't think it's likely to happen. But if you keep your throat relaxed the whole time, then you will never take in too much air. So you breathe in. It must be easy, gentle, just a little bit deeper than your usual breath. And then I want you to see if it's possible to hold your breath, maybe for a second or two. That's it. It's really simple, isn't it? And then I want you to breathe out all the way. So you breathe out. Maybe you want to put a bit of pressure around the ribs just to feel that you're pushing all the old air out of your lungs. You know, there's some fabulous research, I believe it was done by the University of Rotterdam, which examined the effects of deeper breathing. And I discovered that people would break free of insomnia, depression, anxiety attacks. The results were pretty impressive. And their conclusion was that if we could just remind people to breathe more normally, we could probably clear up a lot of ridiculous, irritating, but quite serious problems that people are suffering from today, and only able to deal with the problems through prescription medication. The research is very interesting, and of course it's based on an ancient understanding of how much better we feel when we slow down the breathing. You know, when you breathe a little more deeply, more calmly, your whole thought process shifts into a new dimension. Your feelings calm down. It's a really powerful thing to do. So if we think about gently releasing the shoulders and taking a deeper breath, you're already on a pathway to something incredibly special. Let me share with you another principle that's often overlooked, and it's about smiling. Yeah, you're probably surprised. Smiling? What's that got to do with releasing stress? Well, most of us confront our problems and our challenges with quite a negative set of expectations. It feels like a burden, an imposition. Many people suffer from a fear of failure when they're confronted by a problem. But the fact is that when you smile, and I'm going to share another secret with you right now. This one's completely free as a bonus to you. When you smile, even when you don't feel happy, in other words, when you put that big smile on your face and you don't feel like smiling, your brain recognizes the expression. And your brain interprets the smile as meaning that whatever's in front of you is much easier to solve than you might have imagined. Conversely, if you look at some of the research, when people scowl or frown in front of a problem, the brain automatically assumes that the problem is quite difficult. And this is called, if you're interested, it's called cognitive easing. And as you know, when you smile, not just with your mouth, but smile with your eyes, you can influence how you feel. And what I love most about it is that in a world that's full of fear and doubt and anxiety, when you see somebody smiling, it's deeply reassuring. It's reassuring that all is not lost, all is not dark and terrible and negative. When you see that smile, it reinforces your natural sense of optimism and that power of what we call cognitive easing that occurs when you smile. That can have a huge effect on how you approach problems and challenges. It affects how you feel. And a beautiful thing about it is, I just bet that your smile is about to become infectious. Because when you smile, and you learn to smile from within, it's amazing how other people pick up on it. And they want to share that feeling of comfort and positive energy that you're radiating. But once again, if you decide that you want to make that gentle act of smiling a regular part of your daily repertoire, when you are choosing your clothes in the morning and you make a decision to also perhaps choose your expression for the day, not as some fixed grin, but choosing a moment to smile. Just be ready for some interesting reactions as people react very, very positively to your new expression. It's such a great thing to do. Are you ready for secret number 4? I bet you can't wait. I want to talk about something that is incredibly relevant to most of the people we work with, and that's the benefit of a good night's sleep. Because most people that we work with really have poor sleep. And you probably don't even think about this too much, but most people wake up in the morning with the distinct impression that they could easily get another couple of hours sleep. But they are usually feeling tired, and the day has its demands, work, kids, life, whatever it is. So we tend to go through life always feeling short of sleep. And that's partly to do with the quality of the sleep we're getting. So if you really want to enjoy a better night's rest, we're recommending that you make your good night's sleep a regular habit. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's some good rules. It's incredibly helpful for you to go to bed at the same time. That's right. It's also very helpful for you to reserve the bedroom pretty much for sleep. And we always recommend that you banish the TV. You're probably cringing. Get rid of the laptop. No, you just don't. Your eyebrows are shooting up. Put away the smartphone, the iPad. But you also need to put away all reading material as well. And this is a strict rule that applies to the 20-30 minutes before you're planning to go to sleep. In other words, when you get into bed, you are getting ready to sleep. And as you develop this little routine where you switch off all the mental and emotional stimulus from the books and the media, and you start to learn how to relax your entire body, and it couldn't be easier, it just takes a minute or two. You can just do that by, maybe scrunching up the toes and release them. Tense the ankles and release them. You just move gently through each part of the body, tensing and releasing, especially important to release the muscles around your face, in the tongue and the jaw and the neck as well. Your body will get the message, and you're going to go to sleep. There was another great tip that researchers supported. You need to get rid of any of those little blue lights. The blue lights you have on chargers for the laptop and a phone. Sometimes you have clocks in a room with blue light. Not a good colour for the bedroom. Plus, it's a good idea to turn down the temperature a little bit. A cooler bedroom is much more conducive to a good night's sleep. Go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, make sure you're hydrated, and it's a really great trick to use to give yourself some instructions before you go to sleep. Well, like what? Well, as you relaxed on the bed, you could just say to yourself something like, I am now going to fall deeply asleep, and I'm going to enjoy the best night's sleep I can ever remember. I'm going to sleep deeply and well, and I know now that I'm going to wake up. You can even give yourself a time if you want to. I'm going to wake up feeling refreshed, alert, alive, full of energy and ready to face the day. And you just repeat that sort of instruction to yourself every night. And guess what? Your subconscious and your body will respond. But it's so helpful for you just to develop this very simple habit of preparing to sleep. It's like, oh God, is that the time I must switch off the iPad and, you've just been watching a really scary movie or an emotionally charged drama. No, this is not a good thing to do before you need to sleep. Reserve the 20, 30 minutes before you sleep just for rest and relaxation. Very, very important. And in a surprisingly short amount of time, you'll get into the habit of sleeping really well. And this is incredibly important. And that brings us almost to the end of the presentation. We're going to look at the fifth secret that I'd like to share with you. And this is about learning how to let go. Because most of our creative energy tends to be locked up in a kind of a permanent obsession with the past. And there's a problem with this, because the more we attach ourselves emotionally to the past, the more we're likely to use that emotional model as a framework for the future. And that's why people find it very, very difficult to create meaningful change in their life. They're just reliving the past, and you can change the colours and the shapes and the patterns, but deep down, it's the same old, and so the same patterns are repeated. Learning how to let go of the past, to free yourself from whatever happened before, is like waking up fresh and new with a completely undistinguished set of parameters. You haven't set any limits yet. All of those limitations which we inherited from the past no longer apply. And when you're able to wake up with a completely fresh set of dynamics, suddenly you can decide that you're going to put the limits much further out than they were before. So you've got more freedom of movement, freedom of choice, how you think, how you feel. It's a great moment for you to decide how you really want to live out this precious gift of your life. Because if you're waking up feeling stressed and unhappy, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. I don't think it's necessarily possible for us to change the world so that it suits your particular needs and requirements, but we can make internal shifts and changes, which are often very subtle, but which are translated into profound and meaningful change for the rest of our lives. And you, I believe, are the only person on this planet who can really decide what that should be, what that future should look like, what will give you the happiness and sense of fulfillment that will make this life so worthwhile. But it begins with learning how to let go of the past. And that's something we explore in much greater detail in some of the material which we offer through the foundation, helping people very quickly to come to terms with whatever's happened and to learn how to let it go. And when I say let go, I mean absolutely. It means freeing yourself from the shadow of the past so the future can take on a completely fresh new shape that better suits your needs and requirements, and probably the requirements of the people around you. My dearest hope for you at this moment is that you've relaxed your shoulders, you've breathed, and that those simple but powerful gestures have already helped you to feel so much better. So if you're feeling good, you're probably wondering, okay, what's next? Well, if you'd like to learn more and take this experience a lot further, all you have to do is just fill in your email address and hit the send button, and it really couldn't be easier. We'll get back to you and we can talk about how to enroll you into some of the courses which we provide for people, specifically to help them to master their stress, to take control of their lives, and really to make such a positive difference the way they live, that life, in its simplest expression, is so much more fulfilling. We're the Wellness Foundation. I'm Greg Parry, and we're here to help you make a difference. Thanks so much for joining me on this presentation. We look forward to hearing from you.